Listen, it's not time to unwrap this hair yet. I'm getting ready to go out of town for a girls' weekend, but I was going to make sure that this video still got done. So welcome, of course, it's me, Coach V. It is time for your weekly MIT training video. We're going to talk about why God prepares the woman before he introduces the man. I always talk about how there are so many women, how many women talk about how they are waiting on God, but what I'm actually realizing is that a lot of women who say they're waiting on God, what they're really doing is standing still. And we've got to understand that biblically speaking, when you are waiting, that type of waiting, it is still active. It is still intentional, and it's also still obedient. It's not passive and it's not avoidant. One of the things that I need more Christians and believers to realize, we can rely on the promises of God all day. We can focus on them. We can, prophesy and declare and decree and incorporate them into our prayers. And those things are all absolutely amazing. However, every single promise in the Bible, there is a prerequisite, right? There's something that we need to do in order to obtain the promises of God. Now, I do understand there's a scripture that talks about how he blesses whom he wants to bless, right? He reigns on the just and the unjust. But when it comes to certain prayers and promises and things that we are believing God for, there are absolutely some action steps that we ourselves need to be taking and engaging in. The God that we serve, he does not reward stagnation. What he actually does is he partners with movement. The Genesis 2:18 Amplified Version, how it talks about a companion that is suitable and complementary. Suitability requires preparation. If you are going to be a suitable partner for a man out there, that means that there is some preparation that you, my friend, do need to engage in. So let's talk about why God actually prepares the woman first. I always found it to be very interesting that when you read the Bible, when we look at a lot of the scriptures that talk about relationships, when we look at a lot of the scriptures that talk about marriage, even more specifically, there are a certain amount that are dedicated to husbands, but there are so many more scriptures that are actually dedicated to wives. Of course, I always joke and say, yeah, because a lot of us need to prepare a little bit more. But at the end of the day, God is going to prepare containers before he pours into them, right? And a lot of times relationships fail when identity, discernment, and emotional stability are undeveloped. So those are the areas that a lot of times God is realizing that plague women. Women need assistance in those areas. Women need to seek God so that those areas are not going to be issues or problematic when it comes to a happy, healthy, holy relationship. Therefore, it takes him pouring into those areas a little bit more. I know one thing about God is that he is more concerned with suitability than he is with speed. And if you're one of those women who might be frustrated at the waiting, maybe frustrated at the time that it has taken, maybe frustrated because you didn't think that you were going to be ending 2025 single, yet here you are. It's one of those things where it's okay for you to look at the fact that, hey, maybe you are not prepared to actually sustain something healthy. Maybe you are not yet at that point where you would be able to maintain the kind of relationship and marriage that you deserve and that you should be desiring. So that's why God is not in a rush to answer your prayers. He's not in a rush to meet your need. He wants to ensure that you are going to be able to sustain what it is you are praying for. Truth be told, that's like one of the main reasons a lot of prayers are denied. And it's like a lot of times it's funny because I feel like sometimes a lot of us, and I will include myself, it's like we talk to God, and I'm not going to say it's like intentionally trying to manipulate him, but we can tell him all the things that we're going to do, and we promise how we're going to steward it well and all of this other good stuff, and we mean what we're saying. But that's the beauty of God, is that he knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows what it is we're going to screw up. He knows what it is we're going to sabotage. He knows what we can handle. And when it comes to relationships, love that is introduced too early, it often ends up becoming a lesson instead of a blessing. I like how in the Song of Solomon's book in the Bible, and it talks about not awakening love before it's actually ready, not awakening love too soon. So let's talk about the three areas that must be positioned. First and foremost, the heart. Okay? I always talk about Proverbs 4:23 where it says, above all else, guard your heart. Why? Because we know that the heart is the seat of mind, emotion, and will. Everything that we do, think, whatever, it all flows from the condition of our heart. If your heart is not healed, then that means you have some unhealed areas, right? That means that there are some unhealed wounds, and those things are going to distort discernment. That is why a lot of you are frustrated when it comes to the men that you keep encountering. But truth be told, if you were in a place where you were healed and truly whole, and if you had tended to a lot of your past traumas and things like that, you would be able to discern men instantly. You would be able to tell if someone is going to be a waste of your time. Another thing with the heart would be emotional availability. That is something that is required for you to receive healthy love. We can talk about emotionally unavailable men all day. Are you emotionally available? Are you someone who is actually open to intimacy? Are you someone who is good with communication? Are you ready to be vulnerable? Do you know what your triggers are, and do you know how to manage them? If you have a man who is emotionally intelligent, are you going to be okay with him holding you accountable? If you have a godly man, are you going to react a certain way if he calls out an area of sin, right? Or mentions an area that you're struggling in or making excuses for when it comes to your spiritual journey? How is your heart at the end of the day? Guarded hearts are going to repel consistency while attracting familiarity. You're going to repel a man who is going to be consistent and kind and compassionate, and someone who is going to be a good partner by holding you accountable. And then you're going to keep on attracting what's familiar if you have not yet tended to your heart. Another area that has to be positioned is the mind. Your patterns and cycles, they are going to repeat themselves when your beliefs go unchallenged. When you think about some of the things that you think to be true about men, or about love, or about relationships, about modern dating, about the men that exist today, about what the dating pool is like, about what online dating, about the kind of men that are on the dating apps. What are some of the things that you believe about those things? How are you if someone was to try to challenge your beliefs on any of those things? How would you respond if someone was to try to get you to see things differently or to think a different way about any of those areas? Because if your mind is already made up, that means that your patterns are going to repeat. You are going to continuously encounter the same kind of men that you have continuously said exist today. Some people also have such a grand romanticized idea of what marriage is all about when the Bible does not state a lot of those things. And listen, I'm all for romance, right? I'm all for a man being romantic and planning dates and all of these other different things. But a lot of those things have nothing to do with marriage. And if you have a romanticized idea of how things should go, those are also the things that are going to keep you with choosing potential over patterns. When you're open to renewing your mind and renewing your thinking, that is what's going to change the kind of men that you end up attracting. Area number 3, the nervous system. I've been talking about the nervous system a lot here lately in podcasts and videos and things, because I know that is an area that greatly affects all, not the majority, but all of the women who I end up working with in private coaching. There are some areas that are dysregulated when it comes to their nervous system. This is where anxiety-driven attachment will feel like chemistry. This is where you'll end up staying with someone because you are solely going based off the chemistry that you feel exists between you and that guy. I have been honest myself about how the only reason I stayed with my children's father as long as I did was because we had amazing chemistry. It was completely unmatched. We were misaligned. We did not share a lot of the same values and beliefs. There were definitely conflicts in certain areas and in areas that we, again, disagreed on and things like that. But because of the chemistry, we had a good connection. And it therefore caused us to overlook a lot of the other issues that were definitely going to cause issues if we stayed together forever or much longer than we did. But the chemistry is the reason why we lasted as long as we did. And truth be told, we should have never lasted as long as we did. But if your nervous system is dysregulated, you're going to go based off of chemistry and how a man makes you feel. And it's going to cause you to repeat patterns or stay with someone that you should never even be with. Also, when it comes to your nervous system, I know that peace will a lot of times feel unfamiliar if you are someone who is used to the emotional highs of relationships. In my book, No More Lonely Nights, I talk about being addicted to love and being addicted to drama and how all of those things, excuse me, end up being tied. Of course, I don't have my water next to me when I'm choking on I don't know what. And how a lot of those things are tied to your trauma at the end of the day. But there are literal addictions that form. And if you're someone who's used to being, especially if your attachment style is anxious, preoccupied, that means that more than likely the majority, if not all, of the men that you've dated have been fearful avoidance, or maybe even dismissive avoidant, but more than likely fearful avoidant. That's the top connection that seems to exist. And that means that you're used to the emotional highs. You're used to being the one who pulls a little bit and you're pulling and trying to cling to him. He's pulling away from you. That's doing something inside of your nervous system. So you just kind of get to that space of, okay, maybe this is not the relationship for me. Maybe this is not the man for me. I deserve better, yada, yada, yada. The moment that you pull away, it actually satisfies his nervous system. That's what makes him kind of breadcrumb and come back. And now you're anxious, style and your attachment system is all like, woo, everything is good. You're now used to the emotional highs. And a person who does not heal so that they can get over that area, they're going to either repeat it, or when they decide, oh, okay, I want to do something different, I'm going to change the way I date, I'm going to change the men that I date and all of these things, you'll end up getting with the man who is actually secure and healed and healthy and holy and all of those other things. But because it feels unfamiliar, you're going to label it as boring, or there's no chemistry, or I'm just really not feeling it, or I want to keep on seeing what's out there, even though it can be a man who is absolutely amazing. But because you have not yet healed and created a new vision and a new blueprint, you will end up bypassing something that was actually going to be good and great for you. Regulation is a prerequisite for you to make wise choices. Let's talk about why love often does not find unpositioned women. We got to start with the fact that loneliness will quietly lower your standards. When you are not properly and positively positioned, meaning mindset above all else, when you are not in a space where you have actually dealt with your trauma and done something about your triggers and your patterns and your nervous system and everything else, that means that you are going to continuously date a certain kind of man. Even though you might be telling yourself you're sick of those kind of men, but yet you'll entertain a new one even though he comes through with a different smell and cologne, different attire and whatever else, and you will keep on allowing a lot of his shenanigans until you get tired. In your mind, you already know what it is you really want in a relationship, but because you don't think it's ever going to happen for you, your standards are actually being lowered, and it happens quietly because you're allowing your loneliness to speak for you. Chemistry overriding discernment. Like I said earlier, I stayed with my ex or my children's father because of the chemistry. And a lot of times when you are not in a good place, it'll also cause you to go based off of how the connection feels and the butterflies and the way that he's treating you. You have all these little red flags that kind of pop up, but you quietly stuff them down or overlook them and all of those other good things. You're just not using any discernment at all. And it's because you're allowing the chemistry to override it. Another reason why love does not tend to find unpositioned women is because boundaries absolutely collapse once the attachment forms. When a lot of the women take the relationship readiness assessment that I offer and I ask, are you one to attach quickly to a guy The majority of the women say, like, yeah, I've been known to fall in love quickly, or, oh, it kind of depends on the guy. If you have not yet gotten yourself to the space and place that you need to be, so that you should and could even be dating, so that you can be in a healthy relationship, then it means even if you have some boundaries that you're telling yourself that you're going to enforce, they are going to collapse once you find yourself attached to somebody else. You can put the boundaries in your journal, you can tell your best friend, you can share it on social media, you can do whatever. But if you have not done the inner work for real, then all of those are going to go out the window when Mr. Wrong comes along, okay? Desire will replace observation, meaning because you want love, because you want connection, and I get it. As women, that is our most basic need. As humans, it's unconditional acceptance. As women, it's love, belonging, and connection. So, of course, when you have that desire and everything there, you're not going to even give second thought to what it is you're observing. You'll completely ignore the reality that is in your face because you are only going based off of what it is you want at that moment. You're going to be thinking about the desire that is now replacing observation. A wise woman would allow faith to actually work together with strategy. But what a lot of unwise women tend to do, they let faith become a substitute for strategy. They're solely going based on faith. Okay, I have faith that God is going to send me a good man. I have faith, you know what? Dating is not working out. I'm going to sit here and do nothing. God will send him. I have faith that God heard my prayer. I already know that God heard my prayers and God will send him to me. God will let me know when I'm supposed to be dating. God has me hidden during this season. All of these other different things. And it's like now it becomes a substitute for strategy. You're going to need to get strategic if you're serious about this being your last year being single. If you're serious about meeting an amazing man and being in a good relationship next year, then you need to get strategic. You want to actually start positioning yourself in real life, meaning actually slowing the emotional momentum, not finding yourself getting attached too quickly. Is that thunder? Sorry, our weather has been crazy, but not doing the most too quickly. You want to make sure that you are observing consistency over time, seeing if that man, if his words and his actions truly are aligning. Is he consistent or does he tend to fall off a little bit? You want to make sure that you practice boundaries before your feelings intensify. Goes back to having a vision. This is why it's so important to have a vision and make sure that you have at least started your healing if you are not already healed, because that way you're going to be able to pay attention a little bit better. You're going to be able to observe certain things in the early stages before your feelings and the hormones go haywire, and then you will make sure that you practice and enforce boundaries, and you are going to have a little bit more control over how that relationship goes. Choosing clarity over comfort. I don't care what feels good. I don't care how comfortable the relationship feels. Are you clear on where you stand? Are you clear on what you want? Are you clear on who he is? Are you clear on what he offers? Have you seen and detected, is he even clear as to what he wants? You want to make sure that you always choose clarity. You also want to allow God to correct patterns instead of bypassing them. I always find it interesting how women can pray, oh Lord, deliver me from this, or help me with this, or Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. Lord, take this away from me. Help me to, we'll do all of these things, but it's like, what action steps are you willing to take? Because if you're praying and saying it to God, you're already aware of what the pattern is. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to give it to God and he's going to correct it for me and I don't have to do anything. And you'll keep repeating it, but saying, oh, well, God is working on me. God is helping me in this area, while you're still repeating that same exact thing. No, you have to allow God to actually correct them. And you want to make sure that you are partnering and working with God on those things. And if that means you have to sit a season out of dating and being involved with anyone while you truly address that area, then that is okay. Do whatever work needs to be done so that you can get serious and you can actually see the fruit of your hard work. Private coaching is available precisely because of what I've talked about in this MIT. Transformation must happen internally before outcomes are going to change externally. If you decide that you want private coaching, or if anything maybe struck a nerve in this video, then I can tell you that my private coaching programs, they focus on renewing the heart, reshaping the patterns, strengthening discernment, and stabilizing your emotional responses. Dating success flows from internal alignment, not just effort alone. You can't say, okay, well, I keep talking about how I'm sick of being single. I'm going to put forth effort. I'm going to put myself out there. Next guy that asks me on a date, I'm going to go on a date. You know what? I am going to give the dating apps another try. Be honest and ask yourself, do you even need to be dating right now? Have you really tended to all of those things from the past? Have you really broken those patterns? Have you identified the root as to why those patterns even existed to begin with? You've got to decide that you are going to do the work so that the end of 2026 does not look like how you are ending 2025. Now hear me, you're not late, you're not behind, you're not forgotten, you're not abandoned by God, you're not being punished by God, you're not missing your moment. Preparation is not punishment. I cannot stress that enough. It is protection. It's protecting you from sabotaging something good. It's protecting you from getting hurt. It's protecting a good man from getting hurt. Positioning now determines what you are going to recognize later. So if you've realized that love hasn't found you because something needs to shift internally, then again, private coaching is here to walk you through that transformation. Not rushed, not force-fed, but intentional and rooted. It is time for you to win at love.